Hello, and welcome to the 31 Days of Halloween. I am Light, and this is my channel. Before we get started, there is a contest. Yes, there is. And you have probably found this video at the very end of October. But if you are quick enough and sleuthy enough, you can figure out what 30 videos have in common. Yes, not 31. Someone made a mistake, and that someone is named Light. However, that can be in your favor because it can help you narrow down what the mistake is, therefore what the other 30 videos have in common. If you deduce what they have in common, leave a comment below, and whoever's first will win an Amazon gift card. If you simply cannot figure out what 30 videos have in common, then go ahead and leave comments below my videos, and that automatically enters you in the contest to win the money. So, there you have it. Free money. Leave a comment or figure out what 30 videos have in common. Alright, here we go. Today, or tonight, we are going to discuss the death of one of the original creepiest of creepies, Edgar Allan Poe. The death of Edgar Allan Poe on October 7th, 1849, has remained mysterious. The circumstances leading up to it are uncertain, and the cause of his death is disputed. On October 3rd, the American author was found delirious in Baltimore, Maryland, in, quote, great distress and in need of immediate assistance, according to the man who found him, Joseph W. Walker. He was taken to the Washington College Hospital, where he died at 5 a.m. on Sunday, October 7th. Poe was just 40 years old, and he was never able to explain how he came to be in the condition in which he was found. Much of the extent of the information about the last few days of Poe's life come from his attending physician, John Joseph Moran, although his credibility is questionable. Poe was buried after a very small funeral at the back of Westminster Hall and Burying Ground. However, his remains were moved to a new grave with a larger monument in 1875. The newer monument also marks the burial place of Poe's wife, Virginia, and his mother-in-law, Maria. Theories as to what caused Poe's death include suicide, murder, cholera, hypoglycemia, rabies, syphilis, influenza, and that Poe was a victim of cooping. Evidence of the influence of alcohol is strongly disputed, and since most of us have no idea what cooping is, let me explain that. Cooping was a common practice at the time in which Baltimore's notoriously corrupt politician paid thugs to kidnap down-and-out men, especially the homeless. The victims were drugged, disguised, and forced to vote over and over at different polling places for the chosen candidates, and then they were left for dead. Supporters of the cooping theory point to Poe's unfamiliar and ill-fitting clothes, as well as to the fact that citywide elections were held in Baltimore on the day he was found. The Irish pub nearby had functioned as both a bar and a voting station. After Poe's death, Rufus Wilmot Griswold chose to write Poe's obituary under a pseudonym, which was Ludwig. Griswold, who would become the literary executor of Poe's estate, was actually a rival of Poe and later published his first biography depicting Poe as a depraved, drunk, and drug-addled madman. With friends like those, right? Much of the evidence for this image of Poe is believed to have been forged by Griswold. His friends denounced this depiction. However, history has seemed to have latched onto it, and it is now the lasting impact. All medical records and documents, including Poe's death certificate, have vanished forever, if they ever existed at all. The precise cause of Poe's death is disputed, but many theorists exist, of course. Many biographers have addressed the issue and reached different conclusions, ranging from Jeffrey Meyer's assertion that it was simply hypoglycemia to John Evangelist Walsh's conspiratorial murder plot. Some have suggested that Poe may have taken his own life, related to depression. In 1848, he nearly died from an overdose of laudanum, readily available as a tranquilizer and painkiller. However, it is actually unclear if that was an actual true suicide attempt or simply a miscalculation on Poe's part. It did not lead to Poe's death a year later. In 2020, a psychological analysis of Poe's language theorized that he was suffering from major depressive episodes near the end of his life, and that suicide could not be ruled out. However, just out of curiosity, what does that have to do with the fact that he was wearing a stranger's clothes? Anyway, the evidence for suicide was not consistently present in Poe's professional writings, though, leading the researchers to conclude that depression may have played a role in his death, but suicide seemed unlikely. Snodgrass was convinced that Poe died from alcoholism and did a great deal to popularize this idea. He was a supporter of the temperance movement, and he found Poe a useful example in his temperance work. However, Snodgrass's writings on the topic have proven untrustworthy. Moran contradicted Snodgrass by stating in his own 1885 account that Poe did not die under the effect of any intoxicant. Moran went so far as to claim that Poe had not the slightest odor of liquor upon his breath or person. Even so, some newspapers at the time reported Poe's death as congestion of the brain or cerebral inflammation, both euphemisms for death from disgraceful causes such as alcoholism. In a study of Poe, psychologists suggested that Poe had dipsomania, which means an uncontrollable craving for alcohol. Suggestions of a drug overdose have also been proven to be untrue, though it is still often reported that that is how he died. Thomas Dunn English, an admitted enemy of Poe and a trained doctor, insisted that Poe was not a drug user. He wrote, "Had Poe the opium habit when I knew him, before 1846, I should both as a physician and a man of observation have discovered it during his frequent visits to my rooms, my visit at his house, and our meetings elsewhere. I saw no signs of it, and believe the charge to be a baseless slander. Then there are the numerous other causes of death that have been proposed over the years, and this includes a partial list of various forms of brain disease or brain tumor, diabetes, various types of enzyme deficiencies, syphilis, delirium tremens, epilepsy, and meningeal inflammation. A doctor named John W. Francis examined Poe in May of 1848 and believed that he had heart disease, which Poe later denied. A 2006 test of a sample of Poe's hair provides evidence against the possibility of lead poisoning or mercury poisoning and similar toxic heavy metal exposure. Cholera has also been suggested. Poe had passed through Philadelphia in early 1849 during the cholera epidemic. He got sick during his time in the city and wrote a letter to his aunt, Maria Clem, saying that he may have the cholera or spasms quite as bad. Poe is buried on the grounds of Westminster Hall and Burying Ground and is now part of the University of Maryland School of Law in Baltimore. Even after his death, he created controversy and mystery. Poe was originally buried without a headstone towards the rear corner of the churchyard near his grandfather, David Poe Sr. A headstone of white Italian marble paid for by Nielsen Poe was destroyed before it reached the grave when a train derailed and plowed through the monument yard where it was being kept. Instead, it was marked with a sandstone block that simply read number 80. In 1873, Southern poet Paul Hamilton Hayne visited Poe's grave and published a newspaper article describing its poor condition and suggested a more appropriate monument. Sarah Sigourney Rice, a Baltimore schoolteacher, took advantage of renewed interest in Poe's gravesite and personally solicited for the funds. She even had some of her elocution students give public performances to raise money. Many in Baltimore and throughout the United States contributed. The final $650 came from Philadelphia publisher and philanthropist George William Childs. The new monument was designed by architect George A. Frederick and built by Colonel Hugh Sisson, and included a medallion of Poe by artist Adalbert Volk. All three men were from Baltimore. The cost of this monument, with the medallion, amounted to slightly more than $1,500. In today's money, that would be close to $32,000. Poe was reburied on October 1st, 1875 at a new location close to the front of the church. A celebration was held at the dedication of the new tomb on November 17th. His original burial spot was marked with a large stone donated by Orrin C. Painter, though it was originally accidentally placed in the wrong spot. Attendees included Nielsen Poe, who gave a speech and called his cousin one of the best-hearted men that ever lived, as well as Snodgrass, Nathan C. Brooks, John Hill Hewitt. Though several leading poets were invited to the ceremony, Walt Whitman was the only one to attend. Alfred Tennyson contributed a poem which was read at the ceremony. It reads, "Fate that once denied him, and envy that once decried him, and malice that belied him, now cenotaph his fate." Unknown to the reburial crew, the headstones on all the graves previously facing to the east had been turned to face the west gate in 1864. The crew digging up Poe's remains had difficulty finding the right body. They first exhumed a 19-year-old Maryland militiaman named Philip Mosher Jr., and when they correctly located Poe, they opened his coffin, and one witness noted the skull was in excellent condition. The shape of the forehead, one of Poe's striking features, was easily discerned. A few years later, the remains of Poe's wife, Virginia, were moved to this spot as well. In 1875, the cemetery in which she lay was destroyed, and she had no kin to claim her remains. William Gill, an early Poe biographer, gathered her bones and stored them in a box that he hid under his bed. Virginia's remains were finally buried with her husband's on January 19, 1885, on the 76th anniversary of her husband's birth, and nearly 10 years after his present monument was erected. Thank you for coming to my channel. I hope you found this interesting, maybe learned something. Please give this video a thumbs up if you would like. Also, if you are not subscribed, please do so, and click that bell if you'd like to know when my content goes live. And thank you for coming for the 31 days of Halloween.